Software is becoming disposable. So what happens when it becomes cheaper for us to create our own software than to rent somebody else's? That's what we're going to look at today. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Bots. Today we're looking at software being disposable. So for the last 30 years we've been using software that's been largely designed for thousands of other companies, and we've been paying a premium price for that. What happens if we can start to code and develop our own software that is specific to our use cases and what we want it for, cheaper, faster and more effectively? Let's dig in.
We're seeing this across the board. You see it with mobile phones, with TVs, with cars, with absolutely everything. But now software is becoming disposable, and that was one of the final frontiers. So let's dig in. We've got examples of companies like Curative, who's a medical company, valued at $1.275 billion, and they've replaced a $600,000 a year contract with Salesforce just by vibe coding a CRM, which took their staff apparently 2 months. But we're seeing this happen more and more, and why not? We've got people's like Levels on X saying that he's actually vibe coded his subscriptions, meaning he's stopped paying for all of his subscriptions and he's vibe coded a version of what he was getting. This is becoming more the norm than it is a rarity or something that you'd stop and stare at in the street. So what happens when it becomes easier and cheaper and more reliable just to do it yourself? Now, there is the security element. There is certain things not do this with, but there are things that you can do this with straight away, and you could even start those today. Software has been an interesting beast, and if you remember back in the day, what we'd do is get a CD or we'd get a floppy disk or something from a box that we bought at a computer store, and we'd install that and we'd download that onto our computer or our device, and we would use the software that way. That's the way we consumed it. Then we went to monthly subscriptions, and that's where we rented software through these big corporations and companies, and you'd be paying $40 a month, $50 a month for your subscriptions. And now we're starting to see people move towards generating that software on demand. So people assume that vibe coding things means one-shot prompting and it's terrible quality and it's not secure and it's spaghetti code. I mean, we've moved past that, right? We've had a lot of rejection, we've had a lot of pushback, we've had a lot of people not wanting that to work, but it's progressed significantly in the last year to 18 months. And you can do certain things at a low level, even with minimal skills, that can replace a lot of the stuff that you're already paying for today. So I believe we're going to see an evolution in some of these lower levels. I've been saying that SaaS companies are at risk. I mean that. I think that for the bigger, more important tasks and functions, they'll still have a place for some period of time. But these simple, low-lying subscriptions that we're paying could easily be replaced now by anyone with the knowledge or inclination to be able to code some of these replacements quite easily. Now, don't get me wrong, if we're looking at whether AI has crossed a certain threshold that allows us to be able to perfectly code in one shot all of the replacements that we need in today's day and age, that's not a good way to look at things, because it's not true. So it's not for everything that we can actually do this for already. There are still considerations, and it's still going to be a considerable amount of time before we can do this for more complex functions and features. AI still hallucinates wildly. I will ask it, for example, who's going to win the World Cup, and it might tell me that it's a team that's no longer even in the rounds. It's been eliminated or knocked out. There's lots of hallucinations that go on with very simple things like a random request or pull of information. So that is, you'd be naive to think that that's not happening at a greater level when it comes to creating apps or software replacements. So it doesn't need to replace developers either. All it needs to do is accelerate, speed up, and augment what we're trying to do. If you can actually get the software created more quickly, you can do it more easily and at a lower cost, then people are going to start experimenting with replacing things that are especially significant line items or cost items in a business, and that will also trickle down to households as well. And in actual fact, I think we're seeing it in households more commonly already. Good enough is enough. As long as it's secure and it works and it does basically what you're trying to do, why not create something that saves you $40 or $50 a month? It's something that is there to be used. it will continue to get a great attraction as more and more people show you how to do that and provide the templates for that. And it's already powering real work. But I think still for databases like Salesforce, even though we've seen a company replace that, it's going to be a little while before people trust that with significant storage of data and security and information. But for the little things, we're seeing this happen already. I think one of the next gold rushes will be software as content. And we've been talking about this internally for a year or so now. And the way we see that, or how we think it looks, is if you're talking about a normal standard tweet, it might say, watch out, there's fires in a particular area. But software as a content could be something like a mini app that is then posted as a tweet that shows fire in a particular region, and you can interact with that. You can say, check the wind levels, or give me an update, and it would be tracking and updating live. If you remember back when COVID broke out, there were a few sites that were worldwide and were utilized by millions of people that would track the amount of infections, death by country, by region. Those types of things will become disposable. They'll be used for a very short period of time. It could be a lightning sports carnival. It could be weather. It could be something that is very, very short-lived. People will be able to one-prompt these mini apps. The content that they create would be interactive, usable for a certain period of time, and then throw away. They're not building an app that they then have to polish, pump hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop, come up with marketing campaigns, try and bring more and more people in. This is definitely going to be a big gold rush that we will see emerging very, very soon. But let's look at what gets disrupted first. So like I was saying, it won't replace absolutely everything, but we're already using it for stuff like internal dashboards. You'd look at lightweight customer management systems. You're not going to trust a lot of this with stuff that involves personal information security, especially payment details or money at this particular point in time. So if we look at what's going to be replaced, what remains valuable? And that's what I was saying about banking, payment systems, people's personal financial details, healthcare, regulated software, security infrastructure, systems that hold critical company records that are vulnerable to attack or are valuable or are sensitive. I think we'll still see companies that have spent lots of time and money and effort on these stick to those paths. But one thing I do want to point out is that what we're seeing more and more of is companies that have sunk a lot of money into something, either research and development or product development or getting something out, versus companies coming along and saying, we're starting from scratch, we're going to spin something up, we're going to get that out to the market, and we're going to go. There is a very unusual transitional period happening now where legacy builds, legacy technology might not be worth the effort of saying, well, we've already spent all this time and money, it would be a shame to throw it all away. That could be a hindrance. That could be what stops you taking that next step. It could stop you being competitive. It might sometimes be easier for you to do a flick switch and build alongside what you've built new versions and new models from scratch and then flicking over to that. And we're seeing that happen more and more. It'll be a topic of conversation coming up in the very near future where people say, we've continued to offer a particular service or product. You as an end user haven't noticed any disruption, but we have built the entire back end again. The likely outlook for the immediate future is going to be that you'll still generate all your interfaces, UI, interaction points, touch points with AI, and you'll use these tools that you potentially have vibe coded yourself to collect data from those endpoints, journey map those, put those into experience maps and say, where are customers falling off? Where are they buying more? Where are they becoming more engaged and sticky? And you'll find that they will all be AI generated. They'll be AI governed, run, alerts set up, flags. But the existing platforms and systems that we currently pay for that store critical data provide us with cybersecurity, and cybersecurity is going to be the hottest topic in the space for the next 6 months to a year, and even more so as we start seeing more of these vulnerabilities and more of these hacks by other AI systems and agents. I think one of the biggest elephants in the room as well that's become the real bottleneck is that writing code's becoming easier. So a year and a half ago or a year ago, people were saying there's no point vibe coding because you don't understand the output. And if you don't understand the output, you just get spaghetti code. You can't fix it. You don't understand what's being built. I mean, a lot of these subscriptions that we subscribe to, we don't know fully how they work. a lot of the users, someone has to still verify that that system works, that the flow works properly. You've got AI that can tell you that's not working and I can try and fix that myself, or I can try and provide you with a solution. But someone's got to monitor these failures, right? And they've got to be accountable when things go wrong. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The economic impact of all of this means that small businesses gain access to tools that were only available to large companies before. And what I mean by that is you would be able to code or have provided a system that you otherwise could not have afforded. So small businesses have to make do with whatever they can get for free, credits provided by Azure or by AWS. It's a matter of now saying, well, how do I build that myself? How do I provide that myself? You stop waiting for months and putting in tickets and saying, well, the devs will get to that in 6 months. You can now start putting this stuff out very quickly or putting it into a test environment extremely quickly. So the advantage moves away from simply owning the code or having access to expensive code, and the new advantages become the data, the distribution, the trust, and the reputation. When anyone can create an agent or an application, the creation is no longer the scarce resource, right? We know that. There's going to be an abundance. And I'll give you an example. When we were reading newspapers and collecting the newspapers off the front lawn, we had a very refined, narrow way of receiving information. It was either through the newspapers or on television at the evening news. Now everyone's got a voice, everyone's got their own social channels, everyone's a citizen journalist, everyone's their own interviewer and their own reporter. So when we can create agents and applications very easily, we reach that same saturation problem of what's real, what should I believe in who should I trust. So it's really important to understand still who created what we're consuming or buying or purchasing or interacting with. How do we verify whether that person's good or bad, or that agent or that service is good or bad, and how does it get discovered? How do we earn from it? One of the big elephants in the room that we don't really talk about yet, there's still very, very good data to say that eyeball advertising, so people going onto the web and looking at advertising and marketing, is still going to be a thing, and it's still anticipated to grow for the next little while at least. But what happens when 90% of the internet traffic is, and realistically, I saw a really good stat that talks about the fact that only 2 or 3% of the internet needs to be agents for those interactions to reach that 80+% interaction amount, because agents can do 3,000 transactions in an hour, for example, when we're doing 100 in a day at max. So the agents don't have to be a huge percentage of the population to dominate the traffic. So when they're dominating the traffic, how do these sites and platforms charge for advertising, knowing full well that it's not a human being seeing that? So how do agents index that advertising? How do they take that back to their humans? How is advertising transmitted? How does it change? And that's something that I think if people work that out, that's obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry and business. And I think that hasn't had a clear answer yet. And a lot of people are sort of deferring that and saying it's a lot further away than you think. Others are already trialing new methods going forwards. So I think the short answer is that AI is not good enough yet to replace every single system with a single prompt, but it's good enough to challenge and replace some of the simple low-lying things. It's already changing, as I said, and replacing UI, flows, reporting, dashboards, user metrics, data, giving us red flags when something's not going the way it should. It also provides us with some recommendations based on previous campaigns, got you these results, you should switch to this. So it's providing some pretty good stuff. And we know that software ain't the world. AI can turn software into something the world simply generates on demand. And I think that we're entering that age right now, and we're going to see a lot more people pop up and say, I don't subscribe to anything anymore, I've done it all myself.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Breaking Bots. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave any comments that you have down below on this episode, or for any future topics that you would like to see discussed. And we'll see you for the next episode of Breaking Bots.